What is the diasporan experience like?
It was a shock.
Identity is at the core of us. We cannot talk about parenting without understanding the backdrop that underpin that parenting.
We're getting more educated and losing our own essence.
If we cannot be proud of who we are, that leads to some form of dislocation with our own selves.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of our podcast where we talk about everything motherhood, migration, and culture. As you know, in each of our episodes, we explore a new dimension of the experience of parenting in the diaspora, where the village you are from is far away and the one you're in doesn't quite understand. Today, we have an interesting guest. I think once you start listening to her, you won't be able to stop. Without letting the cat out of the bag, I just want to introduce and welcome Naomi to our podcast. Welcome. You're very welcome. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I am deeply honored to be here.
No, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you for taking time off of a very busy schedule to be here. I think first things first, I'd like you to introduce yourself to our audience. Let them get to know a little bit of who Naomi is.
All right. So my name is Naomi Osemedua, and I am popularly called the Sparkle Queen because I sprinkle my sparkle effect on everything I touch. I am currently the chief strategist at the Center Stage Company, where we are a little obsessed about taking the work that you do from not just the local stage, but to the global stages.
See, I told you would be able to stop listening. Yeah, so thanks for that very interesting introduction.
Thank you.
But today we're here to talk about parenting in the diaspora. But I think your experience didn't start with parenting.
Mm.
It started from being. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your journey?
Right, right. So in 1989, at the age of 11, my father was transferred from Nigeria to Brunei Darussalam. And I remember that journey being almost 2 days. As a matter of fact, we had to stop in Singapore for a night or two before we continued on to Brunei. This was at a time where, that was my first international trip, and it was a big culture shock, leaving a predominantly, Christian community to now a predominantly, Muslim community, and just coming across expatriates from every part of the world. So there was a lot to adjust to, but it was such a beautiful experience that honestly, I must say, has shaped the woman that I am today, the woman that I've become. And of course, filled with exciting memories and adventures. But I'll just stop there so, we can
Yeah,
take
I
the
think I'll dig into that a little
Yes.
bit and then we'll go to the next step of after you were in Brunei. So you arrived Brunei with your family,
Yeah.
child, school.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about what that was like.
Mm.
Because, of course, the kind of person you are, from the little I know of you, you take everything on and make, you get lemon, you make lemonade.
Mm.
But just tell us a little bit about some of the lemons and also some of the apples and oranges.
Right. So when we got to Brunei, we got in October and school was still in session. So I went first to the expatriate school, Panaga. So that's like a primary school. I just finished primary six in Nigeria before we left, but I had to do about 2 months of primary school at Panaga Primary School. And then 1990, January, I moved over to St. Angela's Convent School. So there are lots of Catholic schools in Brunei, and we had a principal who was Indian. Just very deep and variety of cultures. Growing up at that time, I would say, so I grew up as a skinny kid. As a matter of fact, my mom would say when I was little, they would sort of beat me up to eat, but I think
African love.
puberty had its toll at that point in Brunei. And I must be honest, maybe, the burgers and the French fries and,
Nothing wrong with that.
all of that yummy stuff.
Some of us gotta like food.
But I blew up. I blew up. And, compared to my Asian sisters, petite and long silky hair, I felt different. I felt so different. And the bigger I got, the more I lost my self-confidence, especially when people would call me fat, because I was this big African girl, big Afro hair that I didn't even know what to do with at that time. And that affected me. And that wasn't a time where we could go to our parents and have conversations. How do you say, Mommy, I don't really like, how they call me fat, and this is how I feel. But I knew I was very angry. We were in Brunei quite all right, but my parents were very typical African parents. I remember when we got to Brunei. So one of the things I know, Brunei really shaped how we grew up, especially with the things that we could get away with in Nigeria. I remember when we got to Brunei, there was a law. If you were ever caught throwing anything out of the window, out of your car, deportation. So every day my father would, sound the alarm. You can't do this, So there were lots of things that where we could get away with in Nigeria, but in Brunei, we had to be prim and proper.
And then your parents were being African with it.
Very, very African. I remember I'd started cooking at about 8 before we left, and while there, my mother didn't feel like, oh, so now we're abroad, so, the abroad life. I was too short to get to the gas, stove. She got a stool carved out in Brunei, like stand there and turn the semo.
And how did that make you feel? Because I'm sure you would have been the different child. Your experiences at home will be different from the experiences of your classmates, your friends.
Absolutely.
How did that make you feel?
So good enough. I mean, there was a small community of other Nigerians and a few other Africans. And so it wasn't just exclusive. We were the only blacks, there were other black families. But for me, because I started before we left for Brunei, it didn't feel like anything was wrong. And we just knew not to question too many things. And I guess when I started having those challenges as well, I also didn't feel comfortable, going to my parents, because how do you really have the conversation to say they're calling me fat and so,
And that's an interesting thing. If you were in Nigeria, I mean, I know sometimes I'm probably asking you to sort of think it up, but would you have reacted in the same way to being called fat?
I doubt it, because, then I probably would have been in the mix of other, full-bodied young teenagers like myself. But in Brunei, the ratio was,
And in a sense,
wasn't
maybe
in
what you
alignment.
call fat in Brunei is very different, because in Nigeria, you'll have proper
Yes.
big bones, big,
Yes.
fully formed.
So I wouldn't have felt off. I wouldn't have felt different. But in
You'd have
Brunei,
blended it a lot
with the
better.
long silky hair, petite frame, I just was like this really big giant.
You're
And
dealing with difference.
I dealt with different
As a girl,
as a young
as
girl,
a teenage girl.
very formative years, and this is where I was starting to build self-esteem and identity. And here I was, in that mix of name calling and body shaming, and
And with parents who wouldn't understand because they don't get it.
I just never even tried to have the conversation. Maybe they would have understood, but those were not the way.
It wasn't the way.
It wasn't the way we were brought up. I mean, as a parent now, and I don't mean to jump ahead, but that's one of the things I know. I'm intentional about parenting and having those tough conversations. I want my kids to come to me. I mean, in all fairness to my parents, maybe they would have consoled me or comforted me. But it just wasn't a thing back then to discuss those emotional stuff.
Absolutely.
We could talk about school. We could talk about, oh, I need to go for an excursion. But I don't think we were very comfortable talking about feelings.
No, I think that's a very common experience of Africans.
And why though?
To be honest, I don't know, but in a way, it's almost as if talking about feelings is a sign of weakness, and you just kind of get on with it. You get on with
Deal with it.
You deal with things like that, And maybe one of the messages we're saying is, listen, it's one thing to deal with difference when there are other people who reinforce how you're feeling, so you don't stand out too much.
Right.
But as a young girl, like you said, curly hair, bigger frame. And I know you still say fat, but I would like to see a photo of you back then, because it just maybe you were not that big, but big enough that you stood out.
Definitely stood out. And then with the skin color. So there was the skin color, there was the different afro hair against the silky hair. And then there was the full body. I had a lot going on. And to just look back, I see how over the years that affected me even more than I imagined. Because
ask you.
yeah, because years later, I had a bit of setback with school. It wasn't because I wasn't smart, but I was trying to study a course at a university that didn't have accreditation. And I tried to change my school. That didn't work out. And so I had a window where I was not really in school, and I saw my mates, proceeding, and it felt like a trigger again. And about a year down the line, I would meet someone who I felt could see me, could validate me, and against all, instructions and counsel from family and loved ones. At the age of 22, I ran away from home and I eloped.
So you were looking for love. You were looking for
I
acceptance.
was looking for validation.
that thing that you didn't feel you had because you were different.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I sat down to trace my journey, years later. And I was wondering, because it didn't even seem in my nature to do something like that. But now I know better, that there were unhealed trauma. There were things
Oh,
that
I
that
like
were
the
not
fact
dealt
you
with.
use the word trauma.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes that's what we miss. We miss that these experiences. We grew up with these things: sticks and stones may break my bone, but words can never harm
They
me.
hurt.
And what we find, especially, and one of the things I'm really exploring with this podcast, is how these issues affect identity, personhood, and how that leads to some of the challenges, the problems we have in our communities in the diaspora. Mental health being one of them. Because again, mental health is something we don't speak about in our community, actually from Africa. But a lot of the experiences that diasporan kids have relate to the core of who they are. And when you don't have that sense of self, that sense of, this is who I am and I am proud of it, you're looking for, things to feel it. And in your case,
Yeah. Right.
it was a young man.
It was a young man. I mean, and that journey, 9 years later, I was out of it, a single mom, having also survived domestic abuse, and that took me on another trajectory, But it's something now that has worked together for my good. Thank God for God, and just being able to take that mess and turn it to a message, and I'm grateful for that. But again, that formative year, the season rather, so much happened, and I don't know, perhaps it would have been different
Perhaps.
if I wasn't in
But
another.
although I always say it all works out for good.
Absolutely, yes.
No
regrets.
There's no regrets. No regrets. So great. So let's fast forward to the sparkle I see before me.
Yes, mommy
Who's
of
back
4.
today?
Mommy of 4. Today, I am a mom of 4. So my kids
Four.
are like in two generations. So I have a 23-year-old as of this recording, a 21-year-old, 10, and almost 8.
Wow. Yes.
8 next month.
It really is.
Yes, and it's been quite a journey now, being a mom, being on the other side.
So tell me, how has your experiences shaped? First of all, if you don't mind my ask, did you have your kids in Nigeria or out of Nigeria?
No, I had my kids here.
Good.
I had my kids.
So what was your
both of them.
experience of, motherhood
Mother.
and then parenting?
Being a mother. So my first son, coincidentally was born on International Women's Day, March 8th. So I became a mother on, International Women's Day, 2002. Being the first, I mean, it was in the heat of the season where I was a bit disconnected from my family. So there was a lot around his birth, but I embraced motherhood quickly. I had to grow up quickly. I really didn't have my mom in that season around me to do all the
Usual
mothering. Yes, but on the side of the young man I was with, his mother, in all fairness to her, did the best she could in terms of supporting. But I think it would have been lovely if I had my mommy. Yes, but yeah, and then I
But
had
the
the second.
African thing still kicked in.
Yes,
His mother stepped
yes.
in.
Oh, she stepped in and she helped, and then I had the second one, and over time, I I knew I wanted something different from my sons, but then when I had to walk away from that union, that was me having to figure out now being a single mother. I mean, that was a first, and that season passed, and thank God I found love again, and I got married. And
Congratulations.
thank you, and so I have Samuel and Sparkle. But the beautiful thing about being where I am today is really understanding the power of intentional parenting. And now one of my sons,
Intentional
yeah,
parenting.
and now
I like that.
okay, so
What do you
stay
got?
here. Okay, we can stay here a
We
bit.
can say here, intentional parenting.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
So first, I would say for me, intentional parenting is really being present. I never want to be a stranger in the lives of my children. I feel maybe because of the experiences I've had, I made a promise to myself, to be in the know. And that's not being all over the place, because you don't also
Not being a helicopter. That's another layer.
that word recently.
That's another label. I don't like it.
No. I not being, overly, mother hen covering, but enough to say, look, I'm here. And also training the kids to understand that they will have to be accountable for the decisions that they make, and living with the consequences. So you could go do something, and then it's out of the bag, and it's like, okay, here we are. What's gonna happen? What have you learned? So my parenting style has been a bit different from how I was raised, but definitely with the nurturing. I had a lot of nurturing and a lot of love from my parents, except from the season where I was, a bit,
And of course, we know the background.
yes, distant. But raising my kids and teaching them, of course, grounding them in the faith, because for me that was not even negotiable. I was raised in a Christian home, and so also raising my children, I'm raising them too without foundation of faith in God, but also allowing them experience life, to say, well, look, it's not always going to be rosy. You'll make mistakes, but you pick yourself up, you'll get up, you will learn from it, and you will not make them again. And with my older kids, they're very much aware of the things that I've gone through, and we've had very honest, plain conversations about,
That's
the
really
split.
important.
Oh yes,
Because they can learn from your
experience. Please learn, learn.
And so maybe one of the things I would like to explore there is in terms of, because you talked about confidence, you talked about not feeling a sense of belonging. Have you tried to nurture that in your kids? Of course, you have them in Nigeria. So did you think that the environment in which they grew supported that, or was it even more challenging for them?
Okay. For the environment, I truly believe that we can't outsource parenting. Sometimes it feels like, yes, there's the school system, there is the religious community, and all the other communities out there. But when it comes to how my kids are being raised now and how they're being nurtured, I take full responsibility. And in ensuring that even if it's wild out there, even if there are people who would have opinions, it's my responsibility to create that space where my kids know that they are special, that they're valued, they're not they're enough, right? I
They don't have to be more than they are.
right.
They should just be the best of who they are.
The best of who they are, right? And not be in that spirit of comparison and wanting to feel like, oh, someone has this. And I remember even when my daughter she's just the only girl. When she was much younger, I remember when she would come and maybe she has seen someone make their hair and they've added extensions, because I didn't, want that for her too early. And she wanted that, and I would say, no, your hair is beautiful. You have lovely natural hair. that is fake hair. I would, just make her just come up a bit and find confidence in just her beauty and her hair and everything being enough. So it's a conscious, consistent effort in ensuring, and if you look at just what the world is like today, what the kids are exposed to, social media and cyberbullying, there's so much that our kids are exposed to that we were not even exposed to in our time.
Absolutely. So
Like,
in a sense, what you're saying is, and I completely agree, because each time I come home, and home is Nigeria, I feel, oh my God, this isn't exactly how I remember it. So in a sense, even here, we're having that cultural interchange.
oh yeah,
So you have the support, you have the reinforcing messages, but also there is a discordance.
yes, and you can grab all of these things from what you exposed to, what you expose yourself to, and that's why for me it's a no with
Mm.
my kids, especially the young ones having gadgets. No, you're not having an iPad. I'm still that mom, yes, and if you need to do any assignment that needs a laptop, it will be supervised, because again, I don't want early exposure that forces them to see things and hear things they have no business with. And God help me, they don't even come to talk about it. Then a cycle is being repeated. So that's the intentionality for me. And for some other people, it could be hell no. My children, they all had iPads from when they were 3. Well, that's you. You do you. So it's
And that's a really critical message, isn't it? Which is that we all do parenting differently.
absolutely
And we all have expectations for our children.
right.
You know.
Right.
And in our really complex world, oftentimes there isn't a right or a wrong way sometimes.
Mhm.
We all do it differently.
Mhm.
But at the core of it, we want individuals who are well-rounded,
That's it.
who have a sense of self, identity,
And who will not be a menace to society. I don't want to raise children that I can't be proud to call their names, or when their names are called, I'm looking for where to hide my head. That's important for me. And so raising them with the right values, raising them with the right morals. And of course, at the core and the foundation is, their walk with God, understanding that He's first place, best place, highest place, and then everything else can follow.
Can I just go in there a little bit, because you've kind of mentioned your faith a few times now. So for me, I think that's really critical for you. And do you find that your faith and the support system within your faith reinforces your messages to your kid, or do you
Yes.
find
100%, 100%. And so the things I would share at home, being able to go to Bible school on Sundays, or well, for them it's Sunday school, and read scriptures and do memory verses, and then come back home. I mean, my kids, they have Bibles as early as you can read. You can read a book, you can read a Bible, right? And I enforce that reading habit to say you have to know the scriptures too for yourself.
Yeah. So part of what I call your village is your church,
My
your
village.
church family.
Oh yes,
Part of that
it's a
village
big part
that
of it.
supports in the bringing up of your child. So
It's a big
you're
part of it.
intentional, but you're intentional in taking them to the places that reinforces the values and principles that you
Absolutely.
want to see.
Absolutely. And it even dictates the school system. So for me, the kids could not just also be in any kind of school. I was intentional about looking for schools that also would enforce that which I believed in. And so today, so you go to school, you hear it. You go to church, you hear it. You come home, you hear it. So there's
So the school also reinforces the same
absolutely,
message.
absolutely.
So I'm going to ask you this question because it's something I experienced. Have you ever gone to school where you've kind of said, "Oh, this child is predicted a B, a C, an A, but they haven't quite achieved it. Why? What will the normal response be from your school? Would it be, it's okay, what they've got is okay, or will they support you in trying to get the child to achieve what they predicted the child to achieve?" I say this because it's one of the things I could never get my head around. The fact that sometimes, especially in the diaspora, children of parents from migrant backgrounds are seen as tiger moms, pushy parents who want their children to do well all the
Guilty as charged.
And oftentimes, sometimes you find that you do not necessarily have the same voice in the schools that you want. So you're there telling your child, "What have you got a B?" And you're like, "No, it's good enough." What is your experience here?
That's interesting. So again, back to how I was raising my children. Being intentional allowed me to identify the areas of giftings for my children. And that allowed me not to put too much pressure. It wasn't room for you to not do well, but it wasn't also your success and your growth also were not measured with grades. And that was me. It wasn't really that, oh, you had failure was not acceptable. Let's be clear. But I wasn't big on, oh, it's just 5 A's. Why are you having 3 B's? No, that was never me. And if there were areas where there were struggles, we would look into it. But I tried not to base my judgment on the grading system. So much so, believe me when I tell you, the kids were my two last, the ones they're attending right now. They don't have a grading system intentionally. And when I found that school, I couldn't even believe it existed in Nigeria. They don't have a grading system. So there is no first, there's no second in class, because each child is allowed to, grow and express their brilliance at their pace. So they learn with what they call the pace system. So I would say to that question, it didn't really play with me. Well, within my own context of raising my children. Yes, yes.
Okay. That's good to know. And again, I think maybe that reflects part of your experience for how you want to build a sense of self, a sense of confidence
Yeah.
in your children. And for you, that is important. So making sure that they are in the right places to allow that to happen.
Yes, it
What
allows the
was
gifts thrive.
right, yeah.
Because I believe like we all have our gifts.
But I want to push you there a little bit
Push me.
because and that's I think because what I'm trying to explore isn't where I don't like if a child isn't able to do something, they're not. I struggled with my maths. I'll still do. Uh, it's one of those things.
Right.
But what would you say? So let's say you identify your child's got a gift, music, violin. They're really good. They need to practice 5 hours a day.
Mm.
Will you make them practice 5 hours a day?
I will make them.
You will make
I
them.
will make them. So typical example, my first son is 23. He's currently living and schooling in Madrid. And he's there because after high school, the big question, what next? He said he wants to play football. Everyone thought, no, that's not okay. You have to go to regular school. But I knew him having to go through regular university here before pursuing that dream might be a little bit too late. So I stood my ground and I insisted and I won. And although when he got to Madrid, he started with a football academy. After a season, it was important too for him to, you know, do school. And he found his balance. So he's playing soccer and he's at school. And of course, that was a whole different culture shock for him as well, learning a new language, learning how to speak Spanish. But I feel if we nurture the giftings in our children, especially from an early stage, we do them a whole world of good. Now, whether he will come out tomorrow to be a professional player is really not even my focus. Is the fact that that environment that he desired
Occupies.
and he needed was provided for him. Now, so that's why I would say if my child needed to play violin for 5 hours to nurture that gift, I would let her or let him.
Not the Latin. They're good at it. They're good at it. But they kind of want to play on the computer games rather than play the violin.
Oh, no, then we would have a balance. It will not be extreme. So I'm not that extreme mom that would just say, oh, this is it. Like my daughter, she does ballet, she does gymnastics, she makes clothes. She's 7 going on 8. She makes her hair. I'm letting her explore everything. For some parents, it would have been, oh, there's something here in gymnastics. Let's go to the gym 5 times a week. but I don't feel I'm doing,
Or you're ambitious for your children,
to be
for
honest,
them to self-actualize.
that's the word, because I don't even want anyone chasing my path. All my kids are on different paths, even totally different from mine, and it's fine. That's the whole idea, because I don't want anyone feeling the pressure of I want to be like mom. No, please be you as God has designed and prepared you for this world. My role as a parent is to identify that gifting, nurture it, and provide an atmosphere that allows it to thrive. And that's what my husband and I are doing, just ensuring the kids are in places where they can thrive. So yeah.
It's been really interesting speaking to you. As you can see, there's been a varied experience from Naomi. From first I experience as a diasporan kid, and understanding what difference feels like and the impact that's had on her. And then self-regulating as a parent to try and address some of those to ensure that your kids benefit from your experience and that you give them a path to succeed, a path for them to self-actualize,
Right.
a path where I think if I got you correct, and correct me if I'm wrong, the principles are still really important. The values are core.
100%. We're not losing that on the platform of any dream.
You're pushing those quite actively, but then also giving your children the space to explore,
Yeah.
to breathe,
Yeah.
and to be their own person.
Yeah.
And hopefully, in doing all of that, allowing them to become really well-rounded persons.
100%. Spot on. Nothing to add to it.
Excellent.
Thank you.
It's been a delight speaking to you. Wow. I mean, with each of these episodes, I could go on and on because something in my mind telling me, talk a little bit more now, the child. But we're going to have to stop there just because of the time that we have. I'm really, really grateful for the time you've spent and being really honest and I think giving in sharing of your experiences. And I think that's what this podcast is about, because I really feel that we can all learn from one another. We're all really different, and parenting isn't a one size fits all. Every child is different, every parent is different. But if we can aggregate our experiences,
Right.
and understand where the challenges are, where the drawbacks are, so that we can create the environment and the support systems that will allow our children to thrive. Because that's what I really want. I don't want children to survive. I want them to thrive and be the best of who they can be. And I think that's what you're doing, and kudos to you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Naomi.
Thank you for having me.
So that's another one of our episodes done. Thank you very much for taking time to listen. See you again next time. Bye-bye.